the new theater of the mind. The Clown Prince of Doom. The Bruce Collins Show, daring to take radio past the point of no return.
Welcome back to the Bruce Collins Show. We're very glad to have you join us. Tonight, we delve into the topic of occult and esoteric symbolism in modern movies. Does it exist? Author Robert Sullivan joins us and says yes. The Bruce Collins Show airs every Friday night at midnight right here at WWPR 1490 AM. Special announcement. This month, April, you can listen to past archives of The Bruce Collins Show at FringeRadioNetwork.com. That's FringeRadioNetwork.com. There's a tab just for The Bruce Collins Show on the Fringe Radio Network website. That's for April only. After April, starting, of course, on May the 1st, The Bruce Collins Show is pleased to announce that we are joining the Intrepid Paradigm Broadcasting Network. Huge radio platform, the Intrepid Paradigm Broadcasting Network. The Bruce Collins Show is moving forward by joining this network, and you can see this network online at www.ipbn-fm.com. Again, that's ipbn-fm.com. Starting May the 1st, the Bruce Collins Show archives will be there. Now, for all the past archives over the years that exist on Fringe Radio Network, those are going to probably be lost after April 30th. So if you enjoyed any of those programs and you want to listen to them again, go to FringeRadioNetwork.com and download all the old broadcasts of the Bruce Collins Show that you would like to keep. Also, if you find our show to be of value, as we think it is, we would appreciate it if you're able to spread the word for our show by word of mouth, social media, or in whatever creative way you can. Also, we have a Facebook page for the Bruce Collins Show. Please like us there. And you can email the show at bruce_collins_show@AOL.com. Drop us a line just for grins. I should also say the Bruce Collins Show has a new YouTube channel. You can go to youtube.com, put in the Bruce Collins Show in the search box, and you will be led to the Bruce Collins Show YouTube channel. Please subscribe, listen, and if you think they are of value to you, please share our free videos with our extreme thanks. You know, recently I was told by someone that I have a reputation for bad-mouthing radio hosts, which isn't true. I do, however, comment publicly on people that I believe are making ridiculous claims and anointing themselves as experts on topics that they know nothing about. If that's the accusation, I wear that proudly. And here's some recent news stories. A miles-long traffic jam on Interstate 20 near Tuscaloosa, Alabama, was caused by an 18-wheeler that jackknifed and overturned when the 57-year-old driver took his hands off the wheel to pull out a tooth with his fingers. Efforts to haul the truck from the roadside required an hours-long detour of traffic off of the interstate. The driver's mission was successful. He had the tooth in his pocket when rescued. Thank goodness. So I guess the moral of the story here is, if you want to find a good dentist, hop into an 18-wheeler. Louis Moreno Jr., 26 years of age, was pursued by police in Fort Lee, New Jersey, after he entered the carpool lane approaching the George Washington Bridge because he appeared to be alone in his SUV. After ignoring several signals to pull over, he finally stopped, and when informed of his offense, told the officer, "I have 2 passengers in the back," and rolled down a window to show them in the vehicle's third row, apparently satisfying the officer. However, as Marino pulled away, one passenger began screaming and banging on the back door. Marino sped off with his hostages, but was subsequently stopped again and charged with kidnapping and criminal restraint. New York Daily News. Mike Montemayor, until recently a county commissioner in Laredo, Texas, pleaded guilty to bribery charges in June and had argued in January 2015 that he should get a light sentence because, after all, he had subsequently helped FBI agents in a sting against 3 other officials accused of bribery. However, the prosecutor immediately countered that Montemayor had in fact tried to steal the recording devices and Apple computer the FBI had furnished him to do the undercover work. Incidentally, he got 6 years in prison and a $109,000 fine. Laredo Morning Times. Briton Roberto Collins, age 51, not related to Bruce Collins, was sentenced to 13 months in jail by Manchester Crown Court in January after being caught standing on a ladies' room toilet and peering into the next stall. He told police he stood up only to better scratch an itch and was in the ladies' room only because, wearing faulty glasses, he thought it was the men's room. Now here's one you probably heard about. Last year in Middle East school markets, the worldwide publishing giant HarperCollins, again no relation to Bruce Collins, was selling a popular atlas whose maps pretended that there was no such country as Israel. The space that is Israel was merged into Jordan, Syria, and Gaza. The company said it was merely honoring, quote, local preferences, unquote, of potential atlas purchasers, whom HarperCollins presumed, I guess, were Arabs wishing that Israel did not exist. In January 2015, the company finally changed course, publicly regretting its decision and recalling all existing stock. Washington Post. The Supreme Court of Canada recently turned down Joel Ifrigan's appeal, leaving his winning number lottery ticket from 2008 worthless. He had bought 2 tickets seconds before the 9 p.m. deadline on May 23rd of that year, and the tickets had started to print on the store's machine, but only the first one carried that day's date. By the time the second one, with winning numbers for the $27 million jackpot, had gone through the lottery's central computer system and back to the store's printer, the program had already kicked over to the following day and to the next week's drawings. Toronto Sun. Coming up next, Robert Sullivan, Esoteric and Occultic Symbolism in Modern Movies. And joining us this week is Mr. Robert W. Sullivan IV. Robert Sullivan IV is a philosopher, historian, antiquarian, jurist, theologian, writer, and lawyer. The only child of antique dealers, he was born on October 30th, 1971 in Baltimore, Maryland. Robert has worked at various law firms in the Baltimore area, practicing primarily in the area of insurance defense. Robert is also a Freemason, having joined Amicable St. John's Lodge, number 25, Baltimore, Maryland, in 1997. He became a 32nd degree Scottish Rite Mason in 1999, Valley of Baltimore, Orient of Maryland. The Royal Arch of Enoch, the impact of Masonic ritual, philosophy, and symbolism, published in 2012, was his first published work, being the product of 20 years of research. In 2014, Robert published his second book, Cinema Symbolism, a guide to esoteric imagery in popular movies. He is currently writing its sequel titled Cinema Symbolism 2, More Esoteric Imagery from Popular Movies, as well as his first work of fiction, which is A Pact with the Devil, the story of Elizabeth Byrne-Black and her involvement with the occult, black magic, and the dark arts. Robert is also writing another book on Masonry titled Freemasonry and the Path to Babylon. For more information about Robert, you can visit his website, Robert W. Sullivan IV, which stands for the fourth, robertwsullivan.iv.com. Robert, welcome to the Bruce Collins Show.
Hey, Bruce. Thank you for having me on. It's great to be with you.
Well, it's great to have you on. Now, interestingly enough, your target audience, it seems to me, is kind of leery of Freemasonry. Are they wrong?
What do you mean, my part? What do you mean?
Well, you're a member of the Freemasons, but a lot of people who look into symbolism and things like that and conspiracy type stuff, they tend to be a little bit leery of the Freemasons.
Yeah, that's true. The book, was sort of written for anyone to read it, both Freemason and non-Freemason alike. This is the Royal Arch book. Certainly, if someone is leery of my Masonic membership, there's really nothing I can do about that. But it certainly helped me my membership in Freemasonry certainly helped me produce both the Masonic book, and then of course, really, I took the years of research in doing the Masonic book and turned it on Hollywood. So, but the book has been very well received by Freemasons and non-Freemasons alike. Back in October of 14, I spoke at a Masonic lodge in Newport, Rhode Island, in Portsmouth. Actually, I was invited by two York Rite bodies up there, and I've been receiving numerous requests to speak at Masonic temples throughout the country. Actually, but as far as what I was trying to do is also to shine some light into the conspiracy of it, because some of it is actually true, and sometimes it's better to have a Mason talking about it than someone not, but some of it is actually, when you're dealing with like the founding of America, the foundations of the country, the symbolism. I mean, this is all very Freemasonic. And my research, I tried to be as fair and balanced and impartial about it as I could be. But, there is a very heavy influence, within, of the Masonic, fraternity upon the development of this country. This is more documented in the Royal Arch of Enoch book, where I talk about, the Masonic symbolisms coming out of both the Blue Lodge and high degrees. And really, that's one of the themes and theses of the book is, the influence and impact, of these degrees and the symbolisms and the philosophies, on material culture and the United States in particular.
Interesting. And you and I believe in the near future we'll be talking more about Freemasonry, and that might be a little bit of a teaser right there, so that's great. But tonight we want to talk about cinema symbolism. How did occult symbolism become rampant in Hollywood?
Yeah, it seems to me that it's almost like it's been there since its inception. And you can go back to the movies and the Universal Hollywood or horror movies, the black and white with Lugosi and Karloff. I mean, these movies all deal with mystical themes. You'll find these esoteric archetypes turning up in things such as the Robin Hood movie with Errol Flynn. It seems like since its inception, really, since the beginning of Hollywood, you'll find these very occult, esoteric themes, just not even in a veiled way, just on the surface, being part of the Hollywood structure. And I guess there's always been, for lack of a better word, a fascination with this material. It's always been interesting. I mean, it's one of the reasons I got involved with it, or studied it rather, was TV shows like In Search Of, things like that with the old Leonard Nimoy show, dealing with the occult, mysticism, cryptozoology. I mean, I was always fascinated by, as a child by this material. And it's just something that always kind of, was part of my, upbringing. And of course, don't want to belabor this too long. When I went to Oxford, part of my junior year, I really became exposed to sort of the influence of the Hermetic traditional material culture. This got me started on the Royal Arch of Enoch book, which ultimately the final chapter led to the movie book. But, going back to your question, yeah, you'll find this, these themes going back in Hollywood since its inception. I mean, you'll find it even going back older than that. You get into things like Mozart. The Magic Flute opera has a lot of esoteric Egyptian Illuminati themes in it. The works of William Shakespeare, things like Midsummer Night's Dream, Twelfth Night, are very mystical and occult in nature. So, you'll find these themes, in literature, predating even Hollywood. But it really seems with Hollywood, it's always sort of been there. And the movie book, the cinema book, which we're focusing on tonight, really it talks about a lot of modern movies, but it also goes back in time and does explore Hollywood classics such as the Universal horror films and Wizard of Oz and things like that.
Huh. Wow. Now, I have to ask you this. I hate to admit this, but I guess I'm basically asleep when I go to the movies because I had never seen this stuff before. I've heard about some of it, but I've never actually picked it up in the movie theater. I guess I'm mostly there for the popcorn. But when you go to a movie these days, are you surprised when you see a movie and there's no symbolism in it?
In some instances, I guess there's always, I've watched movies. I'm not really surprised either way anymore. It seems to be more prevalent than not. I have watched movies, to answer your question, really, I've watched movies where I was expecting to see nothing, and the movie was actually overloaded with esoteric themes. Alternatively, I've watched movies that I thought was going to be contain this material, and there was nothing there. So I've had it both ways. And it's really, there's a detailed analysis for me when I do this work. When I do this material, especially with the movies, I live by the mantra of when in doubt, throw it out. So I would never analyze a movie unless I was 100% certain that the director and the producers and writings were containing this esoteric imagery. But in one form or another, whether it be kabbalistic, whether it be archetype, whether it be astrology, numerology, mythology, any combination thereof, alchemical. Hollywood loves to play around with alchemy, transition of the self. That's a very popular theme in Hollywood. But, to answer your question, I've seen it both ways. I've watched movies where I thought I was going to see a lot, and I've watched movies where I thought I was going to see a lot, and really there was nothing there.
Interesting. Now, I understand in your book, Cinema Symbolism, one of the movies you touch on is The Matrix. Can you tell us about the things that are in that movie?
Oh, yes. And I'll try to condense this just for time constraints. That's a very heavy question. I could probably spend the rest of the radio show just doing the Matrix trilogy alone. This is a movie that is all three of them contain this general theme. The first one really has it in overload. It's really the Gnostic religion in full throttle is the first Matrix movie. In fact, I would say if you wish to see a Gnostic film, the one that would scream off the page to me would be the first Matrix movie. I mean, this has everything you're looking for from a Gnostic standpoint. The false material world, the abandonment of the material world for spiritual enlightenment, the idea that the material world is created by a lesser god. In Gnosticism, this is called the demiurge. This character turns up in The Matrix Part 2, which is The Matrix Reloaded, called the architect of all things. In Gnosticism, the architect or the Gnostic demiurge is assisted in enforcing his will by a series of angels called the archons who do the bidding of the demiurge. In The Matrix, this is naturally the agents led by Smith. You have the Neo character being the one who is bringing enlightenment to the world. And of course, this is part of the Gnostic tradition, is the pursuit of happiness through divine revelation and esoteric wisdom, which of course Neo possesses. He's going to reveal the truth of the Matrix. So assisting him, you have the sacred feminine, which of course is Trinity. In Gnosticism, this is called Sophia. And if you're familiar with Gnostic teachings coming out of the Nag Hammadi library, part of the sacred Trinity was the sacred feminine, thus the name Trinity. And you'll find nameplate with this all over the place. Morpheus, part of Gnosticism is dualism, good versus evil, light versus darkness, knowledge versus ignorance. So you have Morpheus, the character who brings Neo out of his sleep stage to the real world, yet in mythology it was Morpheus who was the god of sleep and dreams. So you have this dualistic play on the name Morpheus. Then you have Neo as sort of the savior of mankind, the Christ figure type character who's going to save mankind. This is confirmed. This is very, when Neo enters the real world, he's lifted in cruciform towards light to the ship. When he's brought on the bridge of the Nebuchadnezzar, they flash the nameplate of the ship, which says Mark 3:11. That's a reference to the biblical verse, Mark 3:11, that says, basically, I'm just paraphrasing, "Thou art the Son of Man, all demons and dark forces bow down before me," announcing Neo as this new age savior that's going to save mankind from the machines or the Matrix. I am really plowing over a ton of material here. Like I said, I could finish the rest of the show on the Matrix, but you have a lot of Gnostic themes going on in this. You also have the idea in the Matrix, and this is something you'll find really in the movie Fight Club, if you really want to see it better, the idea of a select band who have shrugged off materialism for spiritual enlightenment. This would naturally be the crew of the Nebuchadnezzar. You'll find this in the Fight Club movie, which actually came out the same year as the Matrix, with the space monkey, the people who are joining Fight Club and then abandoning the material world. So yeah, just a lot of, and this comes from the Gnostic teachings of a Gnostic philosopher called Valentinius. So really just a lot of Gnostic themes going on in the Matrix movies. Again, you'll find this in parts 2 and part 3 as well. Also incorporation of the Joseph Campbell monomyth, which is the solar figure, the solar savior, which in the Matrix movies is naturally Neo. So, I mean, just a ton of mythology, a ton of Gnosticism in the Matrix movies. But if you really want to see the Gnostic religion in full throttle, I would definitely recommend the first one.
And I understand there's something about esoteric casting as far as Anthony Zerbe.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. That's really an interesting point. In part 2 and part 3, and this was something I picked on when I was rewatching these movies when I was doing this book. When I was watching part 2 and 3, Anthony Zerbe is actually cast as sort of one of the elders in Zion, and he's one of the people who wants to save Zion from the machines, preserve mankind, preserve its art, preserve its literature, preserve its the history of humanity. And this is very dualistic in nature. And there's this whole scene where, this is in Matrix Part 2, Matrix Reloaded, where Zerbe is walking along with Neo discussing all this. And I remember watching this, and I must have watched it 5 times, and I just remember kept rewatching. I thought to myself, where have I seen this before? I have seen this somewhere else. I have seen this scene from another movie, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. It is literally the exact scene from the movie called Omega Man, starring Charlton Heston. I want to say it came out in 1971-92, only it's completely reversed. It's backwards. In the Omega Man movie, Zerbe is the villain who's discussing the destruction of mankind, the absolutely annihilation of its history. He's the leader of the zombie, the zombie leader in the Omega Man, who's trying to get rid of Charlton Heston, who is the last bastion of humanity, and he's giving this speech about how he wants to destroy Charlton Heston. It's this last bastion of humanity. We got to get rid of it. And the scene is literally reversed in The Matrix Reloaded, where Zerbe is talking to Neo about preserving mankind and preserving its history. So you really have this dualistic play with the casting of Zerbe in The Matrix. It is definitely intentional, and it's a play on this character that he played in the Omega Man, and the Wachowskis are literally reversing the scene with Zerbe.
I want to ask you about a little bit of speculation maybe on your part, or maybe maybe you figured this out, but I'm a Christian, and so watching a movie like this, I wouldn't necessarily change my beliefs, even though obviously the beliefs of this film do not parallel mine. But having said that, why do you think they're doing this? They're embedding these ideas, these concepts, these beliefs into these movies. Are they trying to change my perspective? What do you think they're doing by putting these ideas into these movies?
I think a lot of it has to do, is it mind control? Is it this? I really don't see it that way. I just really think that when you're dealing with these, ancient religions, ancient philosophies, it's really for a filmmaker and incorporating these elements into a film. It's really the idea of turning a piece of celluloid into mythology. That's really the way I see it. And they're making a ton of money on it, so they must be doing something right. Yeah. Hollywood loves to do this. I mean, if you just look at the Academy Awards, which just happened, they just love to pat themselves on the back for making these artistic movies. These movies that could convey these deep philosophical themes. And this is what these movies are really about. And you have not every filmmaker, but you have a lot of them that are very tuned into this material, whether it be mythology or ancient religions or astrology or comparative religion, or numerology, or the occult, esoterica, and they embed it, and it's some of it's more out in the open than others. I'll be the first to admit that. Some of it's very veiled. Some of it takes numerous, even for me, like I said, I've been looking at this material for 20 years. It's really, the embedding of this material, it can be very deep. It's very difficult to pick up on. A lot of times your conscious mind will not see it, unless you're paying attention to it, which is what they want. It's definitely tweaking of the unconscious mind. This ties into the philosophies of a psychiatrist named Carl Gustav Jung, who talked about the collective unconscious and things that were composed of it, and how to basically utilize it to hook a person into it. But you will also find, that the filmmakers are themselves subject to this. So, there's the idea that, they may not even be consciously aware in some instances that they're doing it. But by and large, I found, at least my research, has led me to believe that most of the time, a good portion of the time at any rate, majority of the time is what I'm trying to say, that this material is definitely intentionally placed. And for them, I think it's really a form of mythology making, and also it's codes. And who doesn't love a code? Yeah. It can be like playing a game of chess against these people. Figure out the underlying storyline. Figure out what, on a deeper level, on a much more arcane level, I'm trying to tell you. And it's like a game of chess with these people.
Now, at first glance, the Back to the Future trilogy seems innocent enough, but I understand there's numerology and Egyptology in this trilogy, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I will be plowing over a ton of material here. But yeah, the Back to the Future trilogies, Zemeckis, there's the entire retelling of the Osirian cycle from Egypt with the death of Osiris, the virgin wife Isis, which would be Lorraine Baines, and then their solar child Horus, which would be Marty McFly. You have the Hermes Trismegistus wizard character, who's also part of mythology. This would be Doc Brown. You have the whole idea of Osiris being George McFly being killed and resurrected. This occurs in part 2. And of course, the resurrection of Osiris is made possible via Horus and Isis, which would be Lorraine and Marty. You have an entire numerological theme going on and comparative religion theme going on. Again, I'm just plowing over a ton of material here. Literally, I could go into this one also for the remainder of the show, where you have Marty being the sun god Horus, and comparatively, this is Apollo in the Greco-Roman religion, who drives the sun chariot, and this is, of course, the DeLorean that spits fire and leaves the fire trail behind. And of course, to ignite and charge the sun chariot, you have to invest it with the sun. How is this done? In part 1, this is with the clock tower, this is a very, very adroitly concealed reference to the sun. When the lightning has to strike the tower at the end of the movie, it hits it at 10:04, and that's drilled into your head in part 1. 10:04. And this is a tip-off when you're watching one of these movies. There's a constant repetition of something, or a number or something like that. It's usually it's usually intentionally placed. If you watch Back to the Future Part 1, that time will be drilled into your head over and over again. 10:04 is an esoteric reference to the date of October 4th. 10:04, October 4th, which is actually the 277th day of the solar year, which means there are 88 days left to the solar calendar. And this is why the sun chariot has to hit 88 miles an hour to invest it with the sun, to ignite the sun chariot, to send the solar person, Horus or Apollo, back to the future. And again, I'm literally scratching the surface with a lot of the symbology going on in this film. Zemeckis wreaks havoc with your unconscious mind, with the placement of buildings, what they represent in 2015, what they represent, where they are in 1885, where they are in 1985. The beginning of Back to the Future Part 1 is literally the ending of the movie, and it's just a ton. Again, I'm plowing over a ton of material here, but it's really the Back to the Future trilogy. That's one of those movies we were just talking about where when I was watching it, you watch and you're really not expecting anything, but then when I really started investigating it, that's one of the trilogies that's really overloaded with a lot of arcane symbolism.
And as you said, we can only skim the surface of your book, unfortunately, in an hour. So I want to remind our listeners, the book is Cinema Symbolism by Robert W. Sullivan, and you can go to his website for more information on that book and others at robertwsullivan.iv.com. Again, that's Robert W. Sullivan, IV for fourth, IV.com. Now, Robert, I understand there's occultism in the Star Wars films.
Yes, absolutely, and this again ties into you're looking at a lot of mythology in this. You're again tapping into the solar journey, the solar hero, the solar savior figure. This is, and you're also tapping into some Egyptian mythology again in this one, where. And again, I could spend the rest of the show on the Star Wars trilogy as well, and all six of them as well, and the original trilogy, and when I mean the original, parts 1, 2, and 3, the Phantom Menace clones, and the other one, Sith. This was parts 1, 2, and 3. This also contains an occult casting of the mother, Pernilla August. I talk about more of this in the book. Shmi Skywalker, Anakin's mother. The casting of her is occult in nature. But going back to the original Star Wars, this would be 4, 5, and 6. You had the entire incorporation of the Joseph Campbell monomyth. Who's that and what's that? Joseph Campbell was an American mythologist and symbolist who wrote a book called The Hero with 1,000 Faces. And the hero that he's talking about is this solar hero. And the book documents that if you have this solar hero, certain things happen to him on this grand adventure that the son always has. It's a savior figure. It's Luke Skywalker in Star Wars. It's Frodo Baggins in Lord of the Rings. It's Neo in Matrix. It's Harry Potter in the Harry Potter material. But you even have the name Luke. You have the name Luke Skywalker. The name Luke comes from the Latin lux, meaning light. And of course, light skywalks. He's a solar reference. And again, we're tying into Apollo, who is the sun god, and Apollo has the lunar sister, Diana. This would be Leia, who wears the white robes of the moon. Comparatively, again, this is Horus in the Egyptian religion. And of course, Horus does battle with the Sith, or the Set, this Egyptian god called Set. And of course, in Star Wars, this is Sith, the Sith Lords. These are the Dark Lords. And again, with Star Wars, you have this entire incorporation. I'm just going into some of the mythology and the Egyptian, notions or incorporations into this. But you have the entire Joseph Campbell monomyth. And Campbell talks about this in Hero with 1,000 Faces, where he says, part of this is call to adventure. And of course for Luke, this is where he meets, Obi-Wan. He's told about his father. Then he gets supernatural aid, which is the, lightsaber. And again, you'll find this exact same thing in Matrix. This is when Neo learns Kung Fu. This is in Lord of the Rings, where Frodo gets the mithril armor. You'll find this in Harry Potter with a lot of the wizardry, the learning the spells. And then you get things like Belly of the Whale, where the hero has to fight himself out of an enclosed entrapment. In Star Wars, this is the trash compactor scene. So just a ton. I'm just going over this very briefly. I get into much more in detail in the book, but it's a lot of the incorporation of mythology, the Egyptian religion again, light versus dark, and a lot of the Joseph Campbell monomyth you'll find in Star Wars as well.
Interesting. And one of the things that you talk about is the occultic, I guess, influence on Ian Fleming. Of course, he was the author of the James Bond, the books that led to the movie. And I didn't know he was friends with Aleister Crowley. Can you talk about Ian Fleming and James Bond?
Oh, absolutely. This is probably one of my all-time favorite talking points. Yeah, absolutely. Ian Fleming, during World War II, was in British intelligence, and one of the people that was answerable to him, who was a spy master for the British Crown, was none other than Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley did espionage for the English Crown during World War I and World War II, and during World War II, his handler was none other than Ian Fleming, who, of course, as you correctly said, wrote the James Bond stories. Another person who wrote in this exact same circle was Dennis Wheatley, and Wheatley wrote a story called The Devil Rides Out. This was made into a movie in the 1960s. I mean, you'll find a character in this called Mokada, and Mokada is Aleister Crowley, sort of the dark magician character. And in Rosemary's Baby, Ira Levin actually pays homage to Wheatley. The dark magician in Rosemary's Baby is Mercado, and this is, of course, a play on Mokada from Devil Rides Out of Dennis Wheatley. But yeah, Fleming was heavily influenced by Crowley. In fact, just briefly, when Rudolf Hess, the Nazi deputy, flew to England on the botched peace mission to Scotland, and they threw him in the Tower of London, Crowley actually went to Fleming and said, "Listen, let me practice some magical rituals in front of Hess. We know the Nazis, a lot of the hierarchy, are fascinated with astrology, the occult. You know, Hitler, this has been well documented. Himmler, Goebbels, like Nostradamus." And Fleming liked the idea and actually went to Winston Churchill with it, and Churchill ultimately vetoed it. But with Ian Fleming, you will find this very definite Hermetic influence going on with the James Bond stories. Of course, the sigil for James Bond 007 is a reference to this Elizabethan astrologer and magus named Dr. John Dee, who was one of Queen Elizabeth I spy masters. And when he wrote to Queen Elizabeth on an espionage correspondent, he signed it 007. The little sigil is supposed to look like eyeglasses or spy glasses. And this is meant that it was supposed to be the correspondence was for her eyes only, which is where the terminology for your eyes only comes from. And you'll find, again, with the James Bond films, you have Bond as the solar hero. And of course, he's always battling these over the top, very, esoteric, themed supervillains. You've got the dragon Hugo Drax. You've got the alchemist Auric Goldfinger. And of course, in alchemy, if you were able to transmute gold, you were said to have the golden finger, hence the name Goldfinger. Even his first name, Auric, AU, is the alchemical or chemical symbol for gold. You have, Ernst Stavro Blofeld, the Illuminati character who wants to take over the world. So what, Bond meets with the Hermes Trismegistus character, gets the sacred piece of wisdom. I mean, all the James Bond stories, they're all exactly the same. He gets the mission from M. M is the 13th letter of the alphabet. This denotes solar rulership. The 12 houses of the zodiac being ruled by the 13th sun. Then he sends him to Hermes Q to get the sacred piece of wisdom, which is the gadget that always winds up saving his life. He encounters the evil villain, whatever it is. Then in order to defeat him, he has to perform what's called the alchemical wedding, the unification of the moon and sun, which for Bond is always the Bond girl, which is her name is always overwrought with sexual symbolism. And they unify, and then he's able to defeat the alchemical wedding is complete. Bond can defeat the supervillain. And again, I'm just plowing over a ton of material here. You will find, a lot of occult themes in this as well. The one that jumps off the page is Live and Let Die, which involves the voodoo and the tarot cards. You'll find the name James Bond is a play on the Masonic pillars Jachin and Boaz, which corresponds to the attributes of James Bond. So yeah, just a ton of material going on with the Ian Fleming material. It's probably one of my all-time favorite talking points. I have a whole chapter of it in the book on the occult, basically the occult influence of Ian Fleming and Aleister Crowley.
And again, the book is Cinema Symbolism. I hope our listeners check out that book. And it's by Robert W. Sullivan. Very fascinating, interesting, and compelling information. Now, before you go, I'm going to let you choose one of these three to talk about as our final movie. The Exorcist, the Omen trilogy, or the Smurfs. Which one of those would you like to talk about? Which one of those do you find?
Oh my goodness! Yeah, you've given me three favorite ones. The Omen's too long and involved. The Exorcist, I can briefly get into, and I'll try to wrap up on the Smurfs because they're fun too. The Exorcist is a good one. You have a lot of concepts of apotheosis in this movie, and this is definitely intentional. You have the idea of apotheosis of a character becoming godlike, which in The Exorcist is the little girl. Is Damien Karras, the Jesuit who's going to save the little girl. A lot of very adroitly veiled religious themes, naturally, in The Omen. In The Exorcist, it's veiled though. You have the idea of Karras being the little girl's personal Jesus Christ Savior. He's going to be the one who exorcises her. If you pay attention to the film, you will notice this is symbolized that Karras, by and large, is constantly in a state of ascension. He's always going up hills, up staircases. And interestingly, and this is again another intentional one, when he is introduced into the film, he's coming up onto a subway platform from 33rd Street. This is a clear reference to Jesus being 33 years on earth when he was crucified. So Friedkin, the director, is sort of identifying Christ with Karras as the savior of the little girl. However, if you remember it, Karras is always in doubt. He's always doubting his religion. And this is symbolized at the end of the movie, when he gets the demon out of the girl, but he falls down the steps dying. And again, the downfall, this is symbolizing his doubt that permeates the film. When he dies and he's laying at the bottom of the staircase, you will see spray painted on the wall next to him in graffiti the word pigs. And this is a reference to the gospel tale of Jesus exorcising the demons from the pigs, or from the man, and casting them into a herd of pigs. So you know symbolically what Friedkin is trying to tell you, that the exorcism worked and the demon's gone. You also find some symbology surrounding the Father Marin character of Max von Sydow. He's sort of like the mystic Jesuit priest, and you'll find him at the beginning of the film digging up the pagan ruins, and this is reflecting or echoing a real-life Jesuit priest named Athanasius Kircher, who was a Jesuit, but he was interested also in paganism, pagan nexuses to Christianity, Judaism, Islam. So of course you find Marin at the beginning investigating the pagan ruins. So you'll find that symbology going on with Marin. Finally, with The Exorcist, I'll go to the Smurfs quickly. With The Exorcist, you also find the one thing that's really unique, and again, it's very intentional, but it's very subtle, is the scene where Chris McNeil is sitting in the Behringer Clinic, and she's surrounded by the doctors, and this is when Reagan is really becoming possessed and is really going downhill. The demon's beginning to really take over. No one knows what's wrong with her. The doctors can't figure it out. The shrink can't figure it out. And this is when the guy in the clinic says, "Have you ever considered an exorcism?" If you pay attention to this scene, Friedkin is literally recreating the Last Supper painting of Leonardo da Vinci, where you have Chris, the mother, Chris as Christ. Even their names are almost the same, sitting at the head of the table, and she's surrounded by the four groups of three, and of course this is paralleling the Last Supper painting where Jesus is at the head of the table, surrounded by the 12 apostles in four groups of three. If you watch the film, she's surrounded by 12 doctors in four groups of three, and what Friedkin is trying to show you on a very symbolic level is that a spiritual need and a spiritual cure is needed for the little girl, and Friedkin even goes even one step further. And I can't say the full line because of the language, but just briefly, the doctor's telling her, "Have you ever considered exorcism? It's a stylized religious ritual." And she says something to the effect of, 88 doctors here and no one can figure it out. That's not the line, but of course I can't say what she actually says. But the number 88 is a reference to Greek gematria, which is the assignment of letters to numbers. In Greek gematria, 888 is actually the number of Jesus Christ. So you have this very veiled religious reference going on inside The Exorcist to that basically a spiritual cure is needed. And this is the scene where this really plays out. And you'll see it as clear as day once you pick up on it. And I document this in the book. Finally, on the Smurfs, yeah, I mean, the Smurfs are great. You have the entire thing with you got a lot going on for a television show directed at children for the Smurfs. You have the entire idea of the Smurfs being the perfected communist village. They all wear the same clothing. They all work without pay. They all live rent free. They all look alike. And then, of course, you have the chief communist, which is Papa Smurf, who looks like Karl Marx and wears the red of the communists, and actually wears the red Phrygian cap of the proto-Marxists from the French Revolution. And of course, they all live in this perfect communistic village that Gargamel can't figure out. And Gargamel, the evil wizard, both parallels the materialism of the United States. He's always trying to destroy the Smurfs, and also Nazi Germany, the arch enemy of the communists prior to the United States, prior to the Cold War. And you'll find very, very dark themes going on here. You have Gargamel, the evil wizard, who has this, alchemical laboratory. He has this great satanic grimoire called I think he calls it the Grand Spell Book, which he keeps in the basement. Most people aren't aware of this. The character of Smurfette is actually an alchemical golem. This comes out of the Bible. She's like a Frankenstein's monster. Gargamel actually creates her out of a lump of clay through black magic and sends her into the Smurf village to basically sew a fifth column and destroy it from within. And this is when Papa Smurf catches on to this and uses the white magic to turn Smurfette into the Smurfette with the blonde hair and the Smurfette everyone knows with the little white high heels. But before that, she's sort of this like Frankenstein monster created with black magic by Gargamel. So you have, with the Smurfs, a very veiled allegory with communism, battling Nazism, battling the materialism of Gargamel. And again, this is symbolized. Gargamel is constantly trying to transmute the Philosopher's Stone, trying to turn, base metal into gold. Isn't the black magician character. I mean, it's a lot of very dark themes for a children's show. But yeah, the Smurfs, you got communism, you got Western materialism, you got Nazi Germany, you got Goetia magic, alchemy, all kind of good stuff going on in the Smurfs.
Wow. Again, the book is Cinema Symbolism, A Guide to Esoteric Imagery in Popular Movies by Robert W. Sullivan. You can find out more information about Robert at robertwsullivaniv.com. And I will never look at movies the same again. Robert, I would love to have you back in the future, and we'll touch on Freemasonry, esoteric Freemasonry.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, Bruce, for having me on your show. I thought it was a wonderful show. It was great being here. I appreciate you having me on. And yeah, I would definitely love to come on. We did the Cinema Symbolism book tonight. Next time we'll go over some esoteric Freemasonry and the Royal Arch of Enoch.
Excellent. Very interesting interview with Robert Sullivan, although I would take issue with the Smurfs, perhaps, and maybe some of the other ones, too. I think there is definitely symbolism in modern media, whether it's the movies, music, television, and various other forms of media. But I think sometimes we look so hard at some of these movies that we see things that we're looking for that maybe the intent is not there. For instance, the Smurfs, that's the one that stands out the most for me. I mean, if I was to build a fantasy world in my head and write a book about it, and it was about little blue people, they probably would live in a village where they shared food and they didn't have currency and all of that. So I'm not sure that that's an overt story about communism. And I'm not sure about any of the other movies either, although I think it's very compelling, and I do think that this type of symbolism exists, and I think Robert Sullivan makes a very interesting case nonetheless. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Bruce Collins at The Bruce Collins Show. Thank you so much for joining us each and every week, Fridays at midnight on WWPR 1490 AM. We would ask that you would support all of your favorite charities that help to spread the gospel, clothe the needy, and feed the hungry. You can do that as thanks for listening to our program. We ask of no monetary payback from you, only your listenership and your dedication to making the world a better place. Thank you so much for listening. Now, interestingly enough, your target audience, it seems to me, is kind of leery of Freemasonry. Are they wrong?
What do you mean, What do you mean?
Thank you so much for joining us here at the Bruce Collins Show, where you can find us every Friday night at midnight here at WWPR 1490 AM. Remember, God loves you. We do too. Don't give up.
It was yesterday.